Good evening, this is Unmasked News, and tonight we will explore the truths and discuss the impacts of the global pandemic on one of the fastest growing multinational companies in the world, AirBnB. The global coronavirus outbreak has seen multinational companies suffer as leaders search for new innovative strategies to guide their organisation through the pandemic. CEO of AirBnB, Brian Chesky, showcased the tough conditions they've been operating under for the past 18 months, with figures stating a major loss of almost 80% of their business in the course of only 8 weeks. Linda will now take us through the major impacts the global pandemic has had on Airbnb.
Thank you, Irini. COVID-19 has impacted the hospitality industry massively. Like many businesses, Airbnb was hit hard as travel restrictions started to shut down large parts of their business. During the fourth quarter of 2019, Airbnb collected $1.48 billion in revenue. However, by the second quarter of 2020, which was the peak of the pandemic, Airbnb's revenue dropped to $450 million. This was down 72% year over year. With the number of cancellations increasing and the substantial decrease of bookings, this led Airbnb to record losses of $774 million in the second quarter. COVID-19 has impacted many Airbnb bookings across the globe. Just in Australia alone, from March to the week beginning April 26 of 2020, we could see a substantial decrease in revenue. The two cities that were mostly impacted were Sydney with 71% weekly Airbnb revenue decline and Melbourne with 75% weekly Airbnb revenue decline. In terms of global Airbnb bookings, the rate was 72% in cancellation. Just like any business, managers had to find ways to stay afloat. Airbnb CEO Brian Chesky had to let go of many valuable employees. With this, the company had to find ways to cut costs. This included reducing marketing spending, cut bonuses, reducing executive salaries, and temporarily pausing all new office construction. Airbnb had to adapt quickly by shifting its focus to local and long-term rentals. This meant their direction was closer to the services of a real estate agency. There was a need for this as there was an emerging demand trend where people wanted to move away from packed cities to remote locations. The company adjusted their business to match customer expectations through the global pandemic. Christina will explain in detail how Airbnb responded to this challenge.
Thank you, Linda. There were many ways that Airbnb responded to the challenges, but the main response were by cost-cutting, being more focused on the core of the business, and keeping optimistic for the long term. As Linda stated that the revenue has dropped, Airbnb has responded to this by cutting costs, where the management has decided to cut about 25% of their workforce. Due to this pandemic, they have predicted that they would not know when or if normal travel would return, so the best choice was cutting down their workforce. In addition, they also decreased their capital expenditures and the salaries of their executives. Another way they responded was bringing their focus back on the core of the business. Since Airbnb has become so popular, they had so many things they wanted to pursue. However, once the pandemic hit, they then realized hosting was what made Airbnb unique. This is where they then put more focus back on the people who host their homes. Since these people play an important role for Airbnb, the management team will support the core of the host community more. Keeping optimistic is important during this pandemic as many businesses can lose confidence in their vision. However, for Airbnb, they are determined that they are still optimistic. It shows by how they are able to adapt to the situation quickly in a short period of time so the business can keep running. They did many things, and one of them was developing an online experience feature where their customers could enjoy online activities to adjust to the lockdown measures. I will now pass it on to Grace. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Airbnb's response to scale back on investments has significantly impacted the hospitality industry. The COVID-19 pandemic continues to bring decline and disruption to the hospitality industry. Airbnb's proactive decision to shift their focus to hosting has been disadvantageous to hospitality businesses as there is no demand for their services. The emerging demand trend of consumers moving from urbanized areas to regional areas to escape the effects of the pandemic has significantly impacted urban hospitality businesses. The effects of COVID-19 are prevalent in Australia but can also be felt on a global scale. A study tested the effects of COVID-19 government policies on the hospitality labour market in the US and found that closure policies were responsible for a 20 to 30% reduction in non-salaried workers in the hospitality industry in 2020. The graph shows 3 levels: the month of January for comparison, the average, and the current month in terms of percentage change of non-salaried workers. Non-salaried workers can now more than ever see the importance of job security in a pandemic. Airbnb's response to shift their focus to hosting can be seen to be indirectly responsible for regional development and growth in the hospitality industry where there is demand. This increased demand in regional areas has brought decreased demand in the urbanised world where profit loss is becoming more imminent.
Thanks a lot, Grace, for the information. There's a saying, with great power comes great responsibility. And in this case, Airbnb is holding that power and responsibility. So, when facing COVID-19 pandemic, Airbnb response is considered both ethical and unethical. They refunded millions of dollars bookings and made booking cancellation more flexible with last-minute cancellation and full refunds. The company took great care of the customers, understanding the fear of safety and uncertainty of travel restrictions. And they ultimately succeeded. Though it might seem that they take good care of the customers, Airbnb has suffered a lot of financial loss due to their changing to new refund policies and short-term to long-term rentals. Besides, when shifting to long-term rentals, Airbnb entered a new market and competed with the real estate agencies. Through observation, it is obvious that Airbnb is influenced by utilitarianism, since the company made decisions based on the crisis situations and then decide on the best possible response with the least consequences. As a result, these changes created an imbalance between the internal and external stakeholders, which go against the stakeholder theory. To conclude, they realized that ethical practices are very important in the COVID-19 pandemic. Nevertheless, it is quite difficult for Airbnb to look after all the stakeholders, so the response to the pandemic stay morally questionable. Next, I would like to invite Mary. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Guang. In response to COVID-19 outbreak, Airbnb, like many other companies around the world, has been forced to make some changes. Airbnb's CEO should meet with the management on a regular basis to strategize about the company's future financial health. The CEO should make certain that the management is working to reduce company's workforce in order to meet the company's current needs. By implementing these measures, the company's CEO will be able to reduce operating and salary costs. Major improvement in the digital payment system will help ensure a little or no contact by the stockholders. Continuity and competitiveness of the Airbnb company will require the new technology in making payments from any part of the world and be received immediately. They will significantly reduce contact with paper money and help reduce spread of the virus among the population. The Airbnb firm's CEO should engage the management to ensure that they all maintain integrity, especially during this difficult period of COVID-19, while caring for all stockholders, as this will demonstrate how much we care for their all health.
Thank you, Mary. To finalise our report, Airbnb has chosen to battle their losses and overcome the challenges we have explored through redesigning their platform to allow more flexibility and accessibility, whilst ensuring ethical practices are at the heart of their business. Airbnb as a business was agile and adapted to the substantial changes as well as the emerging demand trend. While Airbnb was responsible for transforming where we stay and when we travel, the pandemic has now changed how we travel altogether. As Mr. Chesky states, home is becoming the new destination. Thank you for tuning in to Unmasked News. I'm Benedica Heaters and you have yourselves a great night.